Cleopatra ruled Egypt for 21 years. You only need one click to rule this channel. Subscribe before the Romans arrive. A child born between the throne and danger. Cleopatra was born in the year 69 BC, in the great city of Alexandria. This city was not only the capital of Egypt, but also one of the most important centers of knowledge in the ancient world. Alexandria was famous for its library, its scholars, and its ships that came from many lands. But behind the beauty of the city, there was danger. Cleopatra was born into the royal family of the Ptolemy dynasty. This family ruled Egypt, but they were not originally Egyptian. They came from Greece and followed Greek traditions. Inside the palace, power was everything. Brothers fought sisters. Parents feared their own children. Blood ties did not mean love or safety. From the moment Cleopatra was born, her life was surrounded by tension and fear. Many children in the royal family did not live long. Some were poisoned. Some were removed from power. Some disappeared quietly. Cleopatra grew up knowing that the palace was not a home. It was a battlefield. Her father, Ptolemy XII, was a weak king. He depended on Rome to keep his throne. This made Egypt unstable. The people were unhappy. The royal family was divided. And Cleopatra watched all of this as a child. Unlike other royal children, Cleopatra was very curious. She liked to listen more than speak. She observed people carefully. She noticed how words could change moods, and how silence could be powerful. While others enjoyed luxury, Cleopatra asked questions. She wanted to understand the world around her. A princess who loved learning. Cleopatra was different from a young age. She loved books, stories, and languages. Alexandria had teachers from many countries, and Cleopatra learned from the best minds of her time. She studied history, philosophy, science, and politics. But what made her truly special was her love for languages. Cleopatra learned Greek, which was her family's language. She also learned Latin, the language of Rome. But she did something no ruler of her family had done before. She learned the Egyptian language. This was very important. For the first time, a ruler from the Ptolemy dynasty could speak directly to the Egyptian people in their own language. Cleopatra wanted to understand their culture, their gods, and their traditions. She wanted them to see her not as a foreign ruler, but as their queen. As a child, she listened to priests talk about ancient gods. She learned about Isis, the goddess of wisdom and protection. Cleopatra admired Isis deeply. She saw how stories and symbols could give people hope and unity. Even at a young age, Cleopatra understood something important. Power does not come only from force. Power also comes from belief. Growing up in a dangerous palace. Life in the palace was never peaceful. Cleopatra saw arguments, secret meetings, and sudden changes in loyalty. One day, someone was powerful. The next day, they were gone. She learned to be careful with her words. She learned when to speak and when to stay silent. She learned that emotions could be weapons. Cleopatra watched how men ruled. She saw their mistakes. She noticed that many leaders acted with anger or pride. Cleopatra decided that she would rule differently. She would rule with intelligence. She would rule with patience. She would rule with understanding. As she grew older, Cleopatra became confident. She knew she was smart. She knew she could learn faster than others. But she also knew that being a woman in a world ruled by men would make her life harder. Still, she was not afraid. The beginning of her destiny. When Cleopatra was a teenager, her father died. According to tradition, she had to share the throne with her younger brother, Ptolemy XIII. He was only a child, but powerful advisors controlled him. These advisors did not trust Cleopatra. They feared her intelligence. They feared her independence. Slowly, Cleopatra was pushed aside. Her name was removed from official documents. Her power was taken away. Finally, she was forced to leave the palace. She became a queen without a throne. But Cleopatra did not give up. Instead of crying, she planned. Instead of running, she prepared. She knew this was only the beginning of her story. A child who chose wisdom over fear. Cleopatra's childhood was not filled with warmth or safety. It was filled with danger, lessons, and hard truths. But those experiences shaped her. They made her strong. They made her smart. They made her ready. Cleopatra learned that survival required more than strength. It required intelligence, courage, and vision. And as she looked toward the future, one thing was clear. She was not born to be forgotten. She was born to rule. A queen who ruled with her mind, not her beauty. Many years later, people would talk about Cleopatra as the most beautiful woman in history. Painters imagined her with perfect skin and shining eyes. Poets wrote that men fell in love with her at first sight. But the truth was different. Cleopatra's real power did not come from her face. It came from her mind. Ancient coins that show her face tell another story. Cleopatra had a strong nose, sharp features, and a serious expression. She did not look soft or fragile. She looked confident and proud. She did not try to look like a young girl. She wanted to look like a ruler. Cleopatra understood something very important. Beauty fades, but intelligence lasts. The power of her voice. Cleopatra had a calm and clear voice. When she spoke, people listened. She did not shout. She did not rush. She chose her words carefully. She knew how to speak differently to different people. With soldiers, she spoke about honor and duty. With scholars, she spoke about knowledge and ideas. With the people, she spoke about food, peace, and hope. Cleopatra listened more than she talked. This made people feel important. When someone spoke to her, they felt understood. They felt seen. This was one of her greatest strengths. Many leaders tried to control others with fear. Cleopatra used understanding instead. She made people believe that working with her was better than working against her. A woman in a world of men. Cleopatra lived in a world ruled by men. Women were expected to stay quiet and obey. But Cleopatra refused to be silent. She studied how men ruled. She learned their rules. Then she learned how to bend them. She dressed in a way that showed authority. She sat straight. She looked people in the eye. Cleopatra never acted weak. Some men felt uncomfortable around her. Others felt challenged. But many respected her, even if they did not say it out loud. She knew that if she wanted to survive, she had to be smarter than everyone else. And she was. Understanding people's hearts. Cleopatra believed that every person had a desire. Some wanted power. Some wanted safety. Some wanted respect. Some wanted to be remembered. She watched carefully and learned what people wanted most. Then she spoke to that desire. She did not lie, but she did not tell everything either. She revealed only what was necessary. This made her dangerous. Not because she used violence, but because she understood human nature. Cleopatra and the image of a goddess. Cleopatra knew that people needed symbols. They needed stories to believe in. So she created an image. She presented herself as the living form of the goddess Isis. Isis was the goddess of wisdom, motherhood, and protection. The people loved her. When Cleopatra appeared in public, she wore gold and white clothes. She moved slowly and gracefully. Light reflected off her jewelry, making her look almost divine. People did not just see a queen. They saw hope. But behind the image, Cleopatra worked hard. She managed money, food supplies, and trade. She made sure Egypt stayed strong. The goddess image was not a lie. It was a message. A queen without fear. Cleopatra knew that many people wanted to remove her from power. She knew that enemies waited for her to make mistakes. But she was not afraid. She believed in preparation. She believed in knowledge. She believed in control. When problems came, she faced them directly. She did not hide. She did not panic. She planned. Every decision she made was part of a larger picture. The beginning of a dangerous game. Rome was growing stronger every year. Its shadow reached Egypt. Cleopatra knew that Egypt could not survive alone. She needed allies. She needed strategy. She needed to be careful. This was the beginning of a dangerous game between Egypt and Rome. Cleopatra understood that one wrong move could destroy her kingdom. But she was ready. She had learned from her childhood. She had learned from exile. She had learned from observation. She was no longer just a young girl in the palace. She was a queen. And she was ready to shape history. A legacy built on intelligence. Cleopatra's story was not about beauty. It was about strength, wisdom, and courage. She proved that power does not always come from armies. Sometimes, it comes from understanding people and making them believe. Her journey was only beginning. And soon, she would meet the man who would change her life, and the fate of Egypt, forever. The carpet that changed history. Cleopatra was no longer in her palace. She was no longer sitting on the throne of Egypt. After her father's death, Cleopatra had been forced out of power by her younger brother, Ptolemy XIII, and the advisors who controlled him. They saw Cleopatra as a threat. She was too smart. Too independent. They removed her name from official documents. They sent soldiers to stop her. Cleopatra had no choice but to leave Egypt. But Cleopatra did not see this as the end. She saw it as a challenge. A queen in exile. Cleopatra escaped to the desert near the eastern border of Egypt. Life there was harsh. The days were hot. The nights were cold. She no longer lived in luxury. But exile gave her time. Time to think. Time to plan. Time to prepare. She gathered loyal followers. She built a small army. She listened to news from Alexandria. She knew that Egypt was divided and weak. Cleopatra understood one thing clearly. She could not defeat her brother by force alone. She needed help. She needed Rome. The arrival of Julius Caesar. At the same time, Rome was in chaos. Julius Caesar, the most powerful general in Rome, arrived in Egypt. He was chasing his enemy, Pompey, after a civil war. But Pompey was already dead. Ptolemy XII's advisors had killed him, hoping to please Caesar. Instead, Caesar was angry. He did not like unnecessary violence. Caesar decided to stay in Alexandria to control the situation. Egypt owed Rome a large amount of money, and Caesar wanted to make sure Rome's interests were protected. Cleopatra heard the news. She knew this was her moment. A dangerous decision. Cleopatra wanted to meet Caesar. But this was not easy. Her brother controlled the city. Guards watched every entrance. Anyone connected to Cleopatra could be arrested or killed. Many people told her it was too dangerous. Cleopatra listened. Then she ignored them. She understood something others did not. If she waited, she would lose everything. She decided to take a risk. The carpet plan. Cleopatra created a bold plan. She asked a loyal friend to help her enter the palace secretly. They rolled her inside a large carpet, or possibly a linen sack, and carried her into Caesar's room as a gift. It was a dangerous move. If she was discovered, she could be killed immediately. But Cleopatra trusted her plan. When the carpet was opened, Cleopatra stood before Julius Caesar. She was not dressed in gold. She was not wearing a crown. She stood there calmly, with confidence in her eyes. Caesar was surprised. He had met many rulers, many generals, many politicians. But he had never met anyone like her. A meeting of minds. Cleopatra did not beg. She did not cry. She spoke clearly and calmly. She explained Egypt's situation. She spoke about her brother's weak rule. She spoke about stability, money, and the future. She spoke as an equal. Caesar listened. He saw her intelligence. He saw her courage. He saw her understanding of politics. Cleopatra did not promise blind loyalty. She offered partnership. Rome needed a strong Egypt. Egypt needed Rome's support. It was a fair deal. Caesar agreed to help her. The return to power. With Caesar's support, Cleopatra returned to Alexandria. Civil war broke out between her forces and her brother's army. The fighting was intense. In the end, Ptolemy XIII died in the Nile River during the battle. Cleopatra became queen again. This time, she ruled alongside another younger brother, as tradition demanded. But the real power was in her hands. Egypt was stable again. For now. More than politics. Cleopatra and Caesar spent time together. They talked about philosophy, power, and history. Cleopatra impressed Caesar not with beauty, but with intelligence. Soon, their relationship became personal. Cleopatra gave birth to a son, Caesarion. She believed he was Caesar's child. This strengthened her position. But Cleopatra never forgot her role as queen. She always put Egypt first. A queen who played the long game. Cleopatra knew that Caesar would not live forever. Rome was unpredictable. Power could change quickly. She continued to prepare. She strengthened Egypt's economy. She secured food supplies. She kept the people loyal. Cleopatra was thinking ahead. Always. The beginning of a legend. The story of the carpet became legend. People spoke of Cleopatra's courage and intelligence. Rome whispered her name with both fear and respect. She was no longer just the queen of Egypt. She was a player on the world stage. And the game had only just begun. The queen who became a living goddess. Cleopatra understood something that many rulers did not. People do not follow power alone. They follow symbols. They follow stories. After returning to the throne with the help of Julius Caesar, Cleopatra knew her position was still fragile. Many people supported her, but many others doubted her. Some saw her as a foreign ruler. Others feared her connection to Rome. Cleopatra needed more than soldiers. She needed belief. The power of the goddess Isis. In ancient Egypt, religion was part of everyday life. The people believed that gods guided the world. One of the most loved gods was Isis. Isis was the goddess of wisdom, motherhood, healing, and protection. She was seen as a caring mother and a powerful protector of Egypt. Cleopatra studied the stories of Isis carefully. She saw a connection. Isis was strong but gentle. Wise but caring. Powerful but close to the people. Cleopatra decided to present herself as the living image of Isis on earth. This was not just religion. It was strategy. Creating a divine image. Cleopatra planned every detail. When she appeared in public, she wore white and gold clothing. She moved slowly and calmly. Her jewelry reflected the sunlight, creating a glowing effect. People whispered as she walked by. She always put Egypt first. A queen who played the long game. Cleopatra knew that Caesar would not live forever. Rome was unpredictable. Power could change quickly. She continued to prepare. She strengthened Egypt's economy. She secured food supplies. She kept the people loyal. Cleopatra was thinking ahead. Always. The beginning of a legend. The story of the carpet became legend. People spoke of Cleopatra's courage and intelligence. Rome whispered her name with both fear and respect. She was no longer just the queen of Egypt. She was a player on the world stage. And the game had only just begun. The queen who became a living goddess. Cleopatra understood something that many rulers did not. People do not follow power alone. They follow symbols. They follow stories. After returning to the throne with the help of Julius Caesar, Cleopatra knew her position was still fragile. Many people supported her, but many others doubted her. Some saw her as a foreign ruler. Others feared her connection to Rome. Cleopatra needed more than soldiers. She needed belief. The power of the goddess Isis. In ancient Egypt, religion was part of everyday life. The people believed that gods guided the world. One of the most loved gods was Isis. Isis was the goddess of wisdom, motherhood, healing, and protection. She was seen as a caring mother and a powerful protector of Egypt. Cleopatra studied the stories of Isis carefully. She saw a connection. Isis was strong but gentle. Wise but caring. Powerful but close to the people. Cleopatra decided to present herself as the living image of Isis on earth. This was not just religion. It was strategy. Creating a divine image. Cleopatra planned every detail. When she appeared in public, she wore white and gold clothing. She moved slowly and calmly. Her jewelry reflected the sunlight, creating a glowing effect. People whispered as she walked by. They did not just see a queen. They saw something sacred. Cleopatra spoke during religious festivals. She stood in temples and performed rituals. Priests supported her image because she respected their traditions and protected their power. She spoke the Egyptian language clearly and with respect. This alone made her different from past rulers. For the first time in generations, the people felt that their ruler truly belonged to Egypt. Faith and politics together. Cleopatra did not separate religion from leadership. She understood that belief could unite people. When crops were good, she thanked the gods publicly. When floods came, she led prayers for protection. When people suffered, she showed compassion. But behind the scenes, Cleopatra worked hard. She controlled grain storage to prevent hunger. She improved trade routes. She stabilized the currency. The goddess image gave her authority. Her intelligence kept the country alive. A queen who understood balance. Cleopatra knew she could not rely only on religion. She balanced her divine image with real leadership. She held meetings with advisors. She listened to generals. She studied reports. Cleopatra believed that a ruler must understand both the heart and the mind of the people. This balance made her dangerous to her enemies. They could not attack her easily. To attack Cleopatra was to attack the goddess Isis herself. Rome watches carefully. Rome was watching. Julius Caesar supported Cleopatra, but many Roman leaders did not trust her. They feared her influence. They feared her intelligence. Some Romans called her dangerous. Others called her clever. But no one ignored her. Cleopatra traveled to Rome and stayed there for a time. She appeared in public as a queen, not as a servant. She did not bow her head. Romans noticed. They saw a woman who ruled with confidence. This made her both admired and feared. Motherhood and power. Cleopatra was also a mother. Her son, Caesarion, became part of her image. She presented him as a symbol of the future. A child of Egypt and Rome. This was powerful. It suggested continuity. It suggested stability. It suggested destiny. Cleopatra wanted people to believe that her rule was not temporary. It was meant to last. The queen behind the goddess. Behind the gold and rituals, Cleopatra remained practical. She knew the goddess image would not protect her forever. Politics could change quickly. Allies could become enemies. She prepared quietly. She strengthened Egypt's defenses. She saved money. She watched Rome closely. If Cleopatra could survive Rome, you can survive one more video. Stay, subscribe, and rule wisely. Cleopatra trusted no one completely. Not even Caesar. The end of one chapter. When Julius Caesar was killed in Rome, the world changed again. Cleopatra lost her strongest protector. But she did not fall. She returned to Egypt quickly. She removed threats to her power. She took full control of the throne. The goddess image remained strong. But now, Cleopatra stood alone. And she knew one thing. To survive, she would need a new alliance. A new strategy. A new chapter. Mark Antony, love or strategy? After the death of Julius Caesar, the world was no longer stable. Rome was divided. Powerful men fought for control. Alliances changed quickly, and trust was rare. Cleopatra watched carefully from Egypt. She knew one thing for certain. Without Rome, Egypt could not survive. But Rome was no longer one voice. It was many voices, all speaking at once. The rise of Mark Antony. Among the leaders of Rome, one man stood out. His name was Mark Antony. He was a strong general, known for his courage and passion. Soldiers loved him. He fought bravely and lived loudly. But Antony was different from Caesar. Caesar was calm and calculating. Antony was emotional and bold. Together with Octavian and Lepidus, Antony ruled part of Rome. Antony controlled the eastern lands, including Egypt. Soon, Antony sent a message to Cleopatra. He ordered her to come and meet him. Cleopatra smiled when she read the message. She knew exactly how to respond. The grand arrival. Cleopatra did not arrive quietly. She traveled on a magnificent ship, decorated with gold and purple sails. Perfume filled the air. Music played as the ship moved along the river. When Cleopatra appeared, she was dressed as the goddess Isis. Antony was amazed. He had expected a queen. Instead, he saw a legend. Cleopatra understood the power of first impressions. She wanted Antony to remember this moment forever. And he did. A meeting of two strong wills. Cleopatra and Antony talked for hours. They laughed. They debated. They challenged each other. Cleopatra did not act shy or silent. She spoke openly and confidently. Antony was not used to this. He was intrigued. Cleopatra spoke about Egypt's wealth. She spoke about loyalty. She spoke about Rome's future in the East. Antony listened. Slowly, a connection formed. But this was not just romance. It was negotiation. A dangerous alliance. Cleopatra offered Antony support. Money. Ships. Resources. In return, she wanted protection. She wanted Egypt to remain strong and independent. Antony agreed. Their alliance became personal. Cleopatra and Antony fell deeply into each other's lives. They shared meals, celebrations, and long conversations. But behind every smile, there was strategy. Cleopatra never forgot her role as queen. Love or control? Many people later argued about Cleopatra's relationship with Antony. Some said she controlled him. Others said he truly loved her. The truth was likely both. Cleopatra understood Antony's weaknesses. Antony admired Cleopatra's strength. Together, they dreamed of a powerful future. They imagined a world where Rome and Egypt ruled side by side. Children and dreams of empire. Cleopatra gave birth to Antony's children. This was more than family. It was political. Their children represented a new vision. A future empire that joined East and West. Cleopatra believed this could change history. But Rome did not agree. Rome's growing fear. Octavian, Caesar's adopted son, watched from Rome. He did not trust Cleopatra. He saw her as a threat. Octavian used words as weapons. He told the Roman people that Antony had been controlled by a foreign queen. He painted Cleopatra as dangerous and untrustworthy. This story spread quickly. Rome began to turn against Antony. A choice that changed everything. Antony faced a difficult choice. Rome or Cleopatra? Duty or love? He chose Cleopatra. Together, they prepared for war. Cleopatra believed in Antony. Antony believed in their dream. But war is never simple. The calm before the storm. As armies gathered and ships prepared, Cleopatra stood beside Antony. She knew the risks. She knew the cost. But she did not step back. She had never stepped back before. This alliance would either make her the most powerful queen in the world, or destroy everything she had built. The world held its breath. History was about to turn. Defeat, betrayal, and the final choice. The war between Antony and Octavian was now unavoidable. Both sides prepared their armies. Ships filled the seas. Soldiers waited for orders. The future of Egypt and Rome was at stake. Cleopatra stood beside Mark Antony. She had chosen this path. And there was no turning back. The Battle of Actium. The most important battle took place at sea, near a place called Actium. Antony had many soldiers. Cleopatra provided ships and money. Together, they believed they could win. But Octavian was patient. He waited. His general, Agrippa, was skilled and careful. Octavian's fleet was faster and better organized. When the battle began, chaos filled the water. Ships crashed into each other. Smoke covered the sky. Cleopatra watched from her flagship. She saw confusion. She saw fear. And she made a decision that would change history. A moment that broke everything. As the battle continued, Cleopatra turned her ships away from the fight and sailed south toward Egypt. Why did she leave? Historians still debate this. Some say she believed the battle was lost. Some say she wanted to protect Egypt's fleet. Some say she feared being captured. When Antony saw Cleopatra leaving, he followed her. He left the battlefield. This moment destroyed his army's spirit. Without their leader, Antony's forces collapsed. Octavian had won. The long road back to Egypt. Antony and Cleopatra returned to Egypt in silence. They had lost the war. Their allies abandoned them. Their power was fading. But Cleopatra did not panic. She began to prepare for the worst. She sent messages to Octavian, trying to negotiate. She offered wealth. She offered loyalty. Octavian did not trust her. He wanted total victory. A world closing in. Octavian's army moved closer to Egypt. Antony's remaining forces deserted him. His confidence was broken. Cleopatra retreated into the palace. She stored treasures. She secured her children's safety. She prepared a place for herself. She knew what awaited her if she was captured. She would be taken to Rome. She would be shown as a prize. She would lose her dignity. Cleopatra refused this fate. The false news. Cleopatra sent word that she had locked herself in her tomb. Soon after, a message reached Antony. It said that Cleopatra was dead. When Antony heard this, his heart broke. He believed life without Cleopatra was meaningless. In despair, he chose to end his life. But the message was false. Cleopatra was still alive. A tragic reunion. Antony did not die immediately. He was carried to Cleopatra's tomb. She saw him bleeding and weak. With great effort, she pulled him inside. They spoke quietly. No speeches. No dreams. Only regret and love. Antony died in her arms. Cleopatra mourned him deeply. But she did not lose control. She knew Octavian would come for her next. The final decision. Octavian entered Alexandria. Cleopatra met him calmly. She tried one last time to negotiate. But Octavian planned to take her to Rome. Alive. Cleopatra understood the message. She would become a symbol of defeat. A trophy. She would lose her identity. Her power. Her story. She would not allow this. The queen's last choice. Cleopatra returned to her chambers. She dressed in royal clothes. She placed her crown carefully. She wrote letters. She said goodbye to her children. Then she made her final choice. The exact way she died remains a mystery. Some say it was a snake. Some say poison. What matters is not how she died. What matters is why. Cleopatra chose death over humiliation. She chose control over fear. She died as she lived. As a queen. The end of a reign. With Cleopatra's death, Egypt fell under Roman control. The age of pharaohs ended. A new world began. But Cleopatra's story did not end. It was only beginning. A legacy that time could not destroy. Cleopatra was gone. The palace was silent. The throne of Egypt was empty. With her death, the ancient kingdom of Egypt officially became part of the Roman Empire. The long line of pharaohs ended. A new chapter of history began. But Cleopatra's story did not disappear. In fact, it grew stronger. Rome tries to control the story. After Cleopatra's death, Octavian returned to Rome as a hero. He became the first emperor of Rome, known as Augustus. To protect his power, he needed to control history. He spoke badly of Cleopatra. He described her as dangerous. As manipulative. As a woman who used beauty to control men. Rome spread this image for many years. Why? Because Rome feared her legacy. Cleopatra was proof that a woman could rule. That a foreign queen could challenge Rome. That intelligence could rival armies. So Rome tried to reduce her to a simple story. But the truth was more powerful. What Cleopatra really left behind. Cleopatra did not leave behind a large empire. She left behind ideas. She showed the world that leadership is not about gender. It is about vision. She proved that words can be stronger than weapons. That strategy can defeat strength. That identity can unite a nation. Cleopatra ruled Egypt during one of its most dangerous times. She kept it stable longer than many expected. She protected its culture, language, and traditions. She did not surrender easily. She fought until the very end. A woman ahead of her time. Cleopatra lived in a world that was not ready for her. She was educated when women were ignored. She spoke multiple languages when others spoke one. She negotiated with the most powerful men in the world as an equal. She did not ask for permission. She acted. This made her unforgettable. The mystery that keeps her alive. Even today, many questions remain. Where is her tomb? How exactly did she die? What were her final thoughts? Historians still search for answers. And that mystery keeps her story alive. Cleopatra is not just history. She is legend. How the world remembers her. Artists painted her. Writers wrote about her. Movies told her story again and again. Each generation created its own Cleopatra. Some saw her as a lover. Some as a villain. Some as a hero. But slowly, modern history began to look deeper. And the image changed. Cleopatra is now seen as a skilled ruler. A brilliant strategist. A woman who refused to be silent. The power of choice. Cleopatra's final act defined her legacy. She chose how her story would end. She refused to be displayed. She refused to be controlled. She refused to be forgotten. That choice echoes through time. It reminds us that even in defeat, dignity matters. Why Cleopatra still matters today. Cleopatra's story speaks to the present. She represents courage in a hostile world. She represents intelligence over force. She represents the struggle to control one's own destiny. Her life shows that power does not always come from armies or titles. Sometimes, it comes from understanding people. Sometimes, it comes from belief. Sometimes, it comes from knowing who you are, and refusing to give that up. The queen who never truly died. Cleopatra's body may have vanished. But her name did not. More than 2,000 years later, we still speak of her. Not because she was beautiful. But because she was powerful. Not because she loved powerful men. But because she stood beside them as an equal. Cleopatra was not perfect. But she was extraordinary. The final words. Cleopatra's life was full of danger, intelligence, love, loss, and choice. She lived as a queen. She ruled as a leader. She died on her own terms. History may belong to the victors. But legends belong to time. And time chose Cleopatra.